Romans 14:7-9 says, "For not one of us lives for himself, and not one of us dies for himself. For if we live for the Lord. If we die for the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we are the Lord's. For this end Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord of both the dead and the living." Well, if you're joining us and reading through the 60-day reading plan, today's reading is Romans 14, and I encourage you to read that passage. Now, one of the problems that we run into in today's church, but it really has been a problem in missionary circles for at least 200 years, is that we really concern ourselves with stuff that doesn't matter and leave out the stuff that does matter. When missionaries first went to the Hawaiian Islands and most of the areas in the Polynesian Pacific, as well as the tribes of South America, their first desire was to get the people to cover up. Nakedness was the dress of the day, and before you came to Christ, you needed to get some clothes on. I remember that as a teenager, the few times I did go to church, that everyone would always dress up. No matter who they were, no man would be without a tie, and most men would have a sports coat or a suit. Women never wore slacks, and many of them wore a hat that was not even required by then. Well, things have changed dramatically in our walk today. It doesn't seem as if we care very much about how we look when we go to church. Now, please don't get me wrong. I believe that we should do everything in our lives to glorify God, and as such, I think that we should dress in a way that glorifies Him, particularly when we're going to a public place in which you might be recognized as the only witness for Christ. But we should not concentrate so hard on the non-essentials and that we forget the essentials and what they are. We are community, and we cannot exist alone. When we attempt to exist alone and live in that way which we have no contact with other believers, over a long period of time we'll not progress in our walk with Christ, but rather we will digress in our walk. We judge others based on what we see, and our first view of a person is how they dress and what they look like. We immediately size them up and make sure that at least mentally we are above them. This is absolutely wrong, and we should confess that sin, and we should repent. We have to live for each other. We should be able to die for each other. If we are living for the Lord, our attitude will be one of service. If we are not living for the Lord, our attitude will be one of selfishness and pride, self-righteousness.